Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Commonwealth Club for today's virtual program. My name is Raj Mathai, the lead anchor at NBC Bay Area, and I'm the moderator for today's event. Presently, as you probably know, the Commonwealth Club has suspended its in-person programming by hosting these special virtual events, including this one. You can learn about our upcoming virtual events by becoming a member or visiting commonwealthclub.org. Again, that's commonwealthclub.org. And the club is grateful for the generous support from all of our viewers and our donors and members. We hope you consider making a donation as well, or even joining the club, even better. You can go online, visit us, or you can simply text the word donate to 415-329-4231. Again, that's 415-329-4231. We also encourage you to like, subscribe, and share the videos like this one with your friends and family. This is the age of social media, so we want to share the word, and we hope you enjoy this as much as we do. During the program, usually we'd be sitting side by side at the Commonwealth Club in San Francisco, but now we are doing it virtually. So please join the conversation through the chat function there on your screen. Chat with us, chat with Al. We can talk about the book, whatever you'd like to, but join our conversation. It is now my pleasure to introduce Al Roker. Al, great to see you. How you doing?
Raj, nice to see you. Where are you right now?
I am in Lake Tahoe. Does this look rustic enough for you here?
Very rustic. I was thinking, wow, this Raj has a nice great room there at home with that industrial carpet. The kids must be tough on it.
Oh, the kids are tough. Well, first of all, usually when we all see you on the Today Show, you've got a volleyball court or a badminton net. You got this great
on the weekends, but during the day, and like sometimes on Overheard on Third, it's the backyard deck. But during the week for the show, I'm usually coming just outside of my garage, so which is fun. So
I hope that garage is clean, because we can turn that camera around.
Actually, you know what? It made me clean up the garage. I pulled everything out, swept it out, got everything up nice and neat, put some cabinets up and things. So it's the garage is the neatest it's been. We've lived up here like 23 years. This is the neatest it's ever been.
Well, it's pretty interesting going through it. You know what? I read the book over the weekend. First of all, it's fun, it's revealing, and it's interesting. I was telling my wife, I go, we watch Al Roker, so many million people do across the country for so many years, and we know you. You're part of our family. You come into our living room or on our phones, our kitchens, wherever you're watching. Yet when you read this book, there's still a lot that we find out. Why'd you write it? What you have so much on your plate. Why go out and write a book?
To be honest, I had no plans to write it. I was speaking at the National Association of Black Journalists convention a little more than a year ago, and this woman comes up to me. Her name was Kershawn Trotman. Her name still is Kershawn Trotman. Anyway, says, I was listening to your talk and your conversation, and I just think your career would be very interesting to people. And then, okay. And she said, well, so I'm a publisher at Hachette. Would you like to talk about it? I said, well, I like a free lunch, so sure, I'll talk about it. And here we are a year later, boom. I'm always hesitant to write these kind of books, that, oh, listen, this is what I did, and well, here's something you can do. And I always worry people, go, who the heck is this guy telling me what to do? So, but I thought it might be kind of interesting. And the other thing is I'm getting older now and my memory's going. So before it's completely shot, and my kids bring their children in and go, look at that drooling man there. Grandpa actually did something. So
you said in the book, you're not retiring unless they drag you out or at 30 Rock or your house right now where your current studio is.
Exactly. I don't plan to, but one never knows. And that's because I love what I do. My daughter is my middle girl. Asked me a couple of weeks ago, Dad, so when are you retiring? I said, never. I don't know. I really haven't made the plans for it. And I talk about that in the introduction to the book. I'm always marvel at these people. I've got a 5-year plan. Really now? Do you? You've got a 5-year plan. So in the midst of the worst global pandemic since 1918, and in the midst of economic collapse, and the greatest social upheaval we've seen since the 1960s, how's that plan going for you right now? It's ludicrous. Look, I think you can plan for your retirement, things like that, but when it comes to your life, I don't. Yeah, look at when in 2001, we had our daughter, Layla, And we pretty much thought that was it. And then 9/11 happened, and my dad got really sick. And we had gone through IVF. I've written about that. And we thought, what the heck? Who knows what's going to happen? And we decided to have another, but we weren't planning on it. I have a daughter from a previous marriage, but wasn't planning on having three. But life happens.
Man, life sure does. You One of the cool things about anyone on TV, and you know this so well, even from my point of view, working on a local level, you see someone on TV, and then off air, there's someone totally different. But there are a few people, not a few, there's more than a few, the special group of people who pretty much what you see on air is what you get off air, and you fall into that category. You're very humble. You talk about that in your book. When you talk about being humble, you're still in many ways, I mean, you're the man. Yeah, you talk about being maybe it's okay to be a second banana and not the top banana, but in many ways, you are the top banana. You're a role model for a lot of people. How do you kind of digest that, being humble on one side, but yet being on the top of your career on the other?
Well, I think knowing that, you know, for whatever reason, it could all go away tomorrow. I don't, and I've kind of tried to raise my kids that, look, just because I'm on TV doesn't make us any more special than anybody else, because that can go away. And my mentor, Willard, said, always have to be yourself because that's all you've got at the end of the day. Um, so, I don't, I'm not comfortable thinking of myself as the top banana. I prefer, second banana status because, I remember talking with Ed McMahon, and this is a man who sat next, was on the number one late night show for years, sitting next to Johnny Carson. He wasn't the star; he was the sidekick, but he had a very rich and rewarding and enviable career doing that, and being the weather person on Today and co-host or whatever. I've still gotten to do some amazing things. I've gotten to talk to idols of mine. I've gotten to go to every Olympics since 1996. Um, and for a kid from Queens, New York, that's pretty heady stuff. So I prefer, because I think once you're like the top, then that kind of connotes that you've made it,
Yeah.
and maybe you're not as hungry as you were. So I like the space I'm inhabiting now.
It's interesting as you speak and as I'm reading the book, a lot of what you say, your drive, your determination, and your background, and I'm an immigrant, and it's almost like an immigrant story because we're supposed to work harder, and also a person of color, you're supposed to work twice as hard, do this, do that. And that's what really comes across in the book, that you're saying, hey, look, I don't have the secret to success, but here's what I did. And I
Yeah.
just continued to show up. That stood out.
Listen, it's funny you say that because both of my parents were first generation. My mother from families from Jamaica, my father's family from the Bahamas. Um, you know, uh, the Caribbean work ethic is one that if you've only got three jobs, you're a
Yeah.
slacker.
Yeah. How many
Uh,
jobs am on is what you
yeah,
wrote.
exactly, exactly. From in living color. So, I'm one of those people that my dad told me in high school. I remember him sitting me down and saying, "Look, you're going to have to work twice as hard and be twice as good to get half as far as the white kid next to you." And I said, "Well, that's not fair." He goes, "Well, it's not. That doesn't matter whether it's fair or not. That's life." Um, and he worked hard, and so and I'm very proud of my kids because they work hard. Look, uh, uh, they could easily try to coast on their name, but they don't. My oldest got a job as a chef. She used her mother's name
Mhm.
because she didn't want people giving her a favor. So I try to instill that in my kids, and I try to when I talk at schools, I try to tell kids that look, you're not owed anything, you're not going to be given anything, especially if you're a person of color. You're going to have to work for it.
You talk about your kids. How do you teach that? How do you teach hard work? They've got plenty of money just through you and your wife. They've got plenty of fame if they want it. How do you teach something where you say, hey, you know what? You got to keep working? Because you can say one thing. How do you
Sure.
do it?
Well, and I don't mean for this to sound, I don't know how it'll sound, but we have a good life. We make a really good living, but we try to stay normal. I mean, if they've flown first class, it's because of the mileage I've accrued from work. Otherwise, we fly coach. We take normal kind of trip. Like we've gone to some really nice places, and we go to regular places where I mean, they see their dad and their mom washing dishes. We try to lead a as normal a life as you can. And nobody's going to say, oh, this guy's leading an average life. No, I lead an above average life, and I know that. But I try to make sure my kids know that too, and that you're not living your life, you're living our lives.
Yeah.
So, and do we spoil them from time to time? Yeah, absolutely, but we try not to because it's like I said, at any moment, circumstances could change, and I want them to be able to stand on their own 2 feet.
You talk about, we'll transition just a bit here. Obviously, you're a weatherman, and that's your passion. That's your love. You talk about being a geek in high school, kind of the AV club, which nowadays, by the way, when we were growing up, right, being a nerd and a geek wasn't cool. Now it's the thing to do. That's how you
That's
get
right.
successful if
That's
you're a
right.
nerd.
In fact, we had our own sign, AV.
That's right.
That's what we did. That's what we'd flash that as we're pushing the projector carts, like we're in some we're the
How do
Crips
you
in
do
the
it?
hoods.
A.
A, put your hand
Oh my
across.
gosh.
V. That's it.
Um,
So
you,
today we'd be the internet nerds.
Al, seriously, in the last couple of months, though, yes, you've done weather, which is phenomenal, but really you've taken on an interesting role. I've noticed this just as a journalist myself. In that third hour of the Today Show, you guys have really talked about some difficult conversations with the whole social movement and social unrest. And you've become, or not just become, but you've added a lot of insight, not just because you're a black man, but you've added a lot of good dialogue and opened up a dialogue. Has that been challenging for you?
No, not really, because we're in a safe space there. We've got a great executive producer, this woman Jackie Levin, and she encourages. She said, "I want you. We want to open this up. We want to have a." And look, you've got three people of color, and a white woman, and Dylan brings a perspective to it. Chanel, obviously, as a black woman raising black children, and Craig as well, brings a different perspective in an interracial marriage, but raising children who will be seen as black, whether they're biracial or not. Uh, and and I think because we trust each other, we knew we could have that conversation. And I thought, well, maybe we'll get some pushback from viewers, and there was none. People welcomed the conversation.
They sure do.
Uh,
I've talked to a lot of people who said, you know what, it's almost must see, and you don't hear that anymore. It's almost must see TV in terms of just the dialogue, and the best dialogues right now are sometimes the most painful.
yeah, so it was. Craig and I had a discussion like that a little earlier for Father's Day, um, and it's funny because I wonder if my book came out I mean, it is coming out today, but if I had written it, say maybe 2 months later,
Mhm.
what the tone would be. And I was concerned about putting out a book that's a little more lighthearted or positive during this time. And yet some of folks have said, well, maybe we can use this right now. But it's a time, we're all, we like to think that, we had Barack Obama as vice president, and we've seen all these people making strides, and we're living in this post-racial society. I mean, you watch TV commercials and you watch them, and they're all these biracial couples and kind of racially amorphous type people, and it's like this great melting pot. But it's not like that in the real world. I mean, I love that a lot of these commercials are aspirational and these programs are aspirational. But, I mean, Deborah and I still go to a number of parties where we're one of only two, maybe three black couples. And,
Especially in the
yeah,
Hamptons, like you talk
yeah,
about, right? I mean,
yeah,
these are
yeah,
these exclusive enclaves, and in
yeah.
the
I mean,
Bay Area, San
look,
Francisco Bay Area as well. There are,
sure.
as diverse as we think we are, there are pockets and rules and lanes that you kind of stick in,
And
which
and
is not.
thankfully, like in the Hamptons, you've got places like Harbor, and some other spots where there's a long running black community. Or you go to the Bluffs and the Vineyard, places like that. So you can find your folks, but I think others have to reach out, and say, look, you've got to diversify your pool of friends.
How did you, when you wrote about it, I'll let you explain it, being, as you said, kind of a chubby, early balding black guy, get a job, even if it's upstate New York in a small market, nonetheless, you got that first break. Why you?
It's funny, Raj, because it was, people who reach out, who become part of your team are so very important. I majored in radio and TV back then. Now it's called communications, but back then it was the radio and TV department at SUNY Oswego, and our department chairman was a guy named Lou O'Donnell, Dr. Lou O'Donnell. He was not only was he the department chairman, but at the same time he was a kid show host in Syracuse. He was it was the Magic Toy Shop. Anyway, the news director said we're going to be this is 1974. We're going to be starting a full blown weekend newscast with sports and weather and a news anchor. And I need a weather person, but I can't afford anybody but a drunk or a college student. Who do you have up at school? And so three of us did tapes. Doc O'Donnell arranged it. He brought the tapes down. The news director picked me, went down and auditioned, and then I just kept calling him. I mean, and that's one of the lessons in the book I tell people, especially young people today. They just want to reach out via text or email.
Yeah.
Pick up the phone, call again and again. Make a pain in the ass of yourself. Write letters. Believe it or not, a letter in this day and age weighs a ton. When it
means
comes,
a lot, right? When you open it up and it's on letterhead, whatever type of letterhead,
yeah.
you write something.
But the guy said, look, and the only way I'm going to get you off my ass is to give you the job. So,
because you kept calling?
I kept calling. It got to the point where the switchboard operator knew, and that's nobody remembers switchboard operators, but it was this woman named Rosie. And hi, dear. No, he's not in right now, but I'll tell him you called. And I remember when she finally put him through, I was like the dog who chases the car. You catch it. Now what? And I kind of stammered through this thing, and he said, okay, I'm giving you the job. I was so flustered. I didn't ask him when I was starting or how much or any of that stuff, but it was, I was a sophomore in college, just had graduated or just had moved. It was the end of my sophomore year, and I'm driving 50 miles each way to get it, to do my weekend weather. And the first weekend I did, it was a Saturday night. And I drove back to school and I stopped at the Oswego sub shop. And it just so happened the TV was on Channel 5, but I didn't notice that. And the girl who was behind the counter looked at me and then looked at us. I just watched you on TV. It was my first, first like recognition.
Yeah.
And she gave me my sub for free.
And then you're hooked. You're in, Al. You're in.
And now I have a sub named after me at that sub shop. That's success, baby.
You've made it. Well, obviously, there's a spark, a charm, an energy about you. This is something I had no idea about. You're now, okay, we leave upstate New York. Now you're working in the Washington, D.C. market. And Willard Scott just calls you and says, hey, let's go to dinner?
He calls
again. I asked the same question. Why you? There's something going on that you're doing on the air or connecting with people that you continue to do.
I think Willard, a couple of things. I dare say that he only had girls. And I think he kind of saw a little bit of himself earlier, a younger him in me. And I think he kind of took me under his wing as kind of an ersatz son. In fact, I do consider him my second dad, to the point where the parallels are such that if my dad were alive today, they'd be the same age. And it was very funny because I answered my phone. Hello. He goes, hey, it's Al Roker. Said, hey, listen, I'm across the street right now. Come on down. We're going to have dinner. And it's okay. So I walk out the back door of my station, and there in this giant red Cadillac convertible is sitting Willard. Come on. Yeah. So I get in. He makes a hard U-turn, parks the car across the street at this restaurant called Alfredo's La Trattoria, and parks it there. And we go in and have dinner. And it was like, I'm sitting here because at the time Willard was the most popular personality
he was the man.
In Washington, D.C. And I'm sitting here with Willard. And the great thing about Willard was that, like, on the air back in those days, he wore a toupee on the air. But as soon as he was done, he'd take it and flip it into a drawer in his desk or something. So he's sitting there, and these beautiful women are coming by and kissing him on the head. And it's like, it was like you're eating with part of the rat pack, you know. So and he just really is one of the most generous human beings because a lot of people will not extend a hand, especially if they think you're any good.
And
Uh,
was he at the competing station
he
as
was at
well?
a WRC, the NBC
So he's
station.
at NBC. You were at
I
TTG,
was
I
at
believe, right?
TTG. It was the then Metro Media, now Fox.
So
But
he
yeah,
calls up the competing weather guy,
right.
and he's the legend, and he says, "Let's go to dinner."
Yeah, and it was
That's
like, oh my
remarkable.
gosh, and his co-anchor was Sue Simmons, who went on to
Sure.
WNBC.
Yeah.
But I had such a crush on Sue, and he brought her to dinner once, and I was like, nah, 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 nah.
Oh, by the way, I like your description of your office, the big corner office at 30 Rock. Come on in, have a cigar, some caviar, if you want to talk about your career. How is your office really at 30 Rock? And granted,
It's
you've been there 40 years now.
Yeah, it's actually where the main Today Show is on the third floor, and then the third hour of Today is on the fifth floor. And I like it. My office is right next to Tom Brokaw on one side and Hoda Kotb on the other. Um, and it's nice, you get a view of the get a view of the plaza and the ice skating rink, and it's kind of light and airy. I'm in a I love my office, and I've got a nice dressing room at Studio 1A. I never thought I'd have a dressing room. It's like, oh, I've got a closet and I can, but I'm still one of those people like Craig. Almost everybody else comes in casual clothes and changes. I come in fully dressed. It's
Yeah,
just
and actually, you say that even when you were broke, you made a point to spend a little money on some nicer clothes. The budget, all things considered. But that's something. Even your eyeglasses. I mean, it's very stylish. That's something you've had forever, right?
I learned it from my first anchorman in Syracuse,
Thank you.
a guy named Ron Curtis, and his real name was Ron Ezzo. But back then, nobody could be ethnic. He was from the south side of Syracuse, Italian section, and one of he was all when he was in the office. You never saw him with his tie loosened. You never saw him without his jacket, even at his desk. He was just a stickler for that. And I learned that. And the other thing I learned from him was that sometimes you make decisions not for your career, but for other reasons. They wanted him to go to WCBS in New York back in the mid 70s. CBS came calling. And he said no because his family really didn't want to move. And he was content where he was. He was happy where he was. He was where he grew up and saw no reason to leave. And I thought, wow, a lot of people don't make those decisions. A lot of
Those are
people
tough
in this
decisions. Yeah.
business,
What was his
very
name again?
Ron Curtis,
Ron Curtis, and his real name.
Ron Ezzo.
Ron Ezzo. Wow. We got a lot of questions here. A lot of people want to ask you stuff. So let's get to some of our viewer questions
Sure.
right now. Al, can you share some of the best advice you've received from a mentor? And what advice do you have for a recent college graduate?
It's funny. And when somebody says it's funny, it rarely is. But and I
That's
was like,
funny.
oh, it's interesting. No, it's not really interesting. Anyway, it's like when the sign says luxury condos. If
Yeah.
you need to tell me they're luxury,
Yeah.
then they're
Or
probably
let me be honest with you.
yeah, yeah. Uh, uh, you know that phrase, that word mentor. I mean, back in the day, nobody used the word mentor. It was like he took me under his wing. He took an interest in me. Something. Anyway, it was Willard. I mean, the advice he gave me, and I live with it today. Um, and that's basically always be yourself because that's all you've got. They can take your job, they can take everything, but you're you, and that's worth its weight in gold. And the other thing is never give up your day job. You can have as many side hustles as you want, but if you've got a really good central gig, and I've got the best there is at the Today Show, you got to remember that. Never get too big for your britches. There are too many people. This is our show is an ensemble. And I think we're all individually terrific broadcasters and journalists. I mean, the rest of them are more so than me, perhaps. But when you put us together, we are unbeatable. And I think that look, and I just am so thrilled to be part of this group. I don't ever want to leave it.
Do you really listen to the A-Team theme song occasionally? That show, the great show from the 1980s?
Occasionally. In 1972, a crack commando unit was sent to prison by a military court for a crime they didn't commit. These men promptly escaped from a maximum security stockade to the Los Angeles underground. Today, survive as soldiers of fortune. If you have a problem, if no one else can help, and maybe if you can find them, maybe you can hire the A-Team.
So you do every
I
day
listen to
when you
it
come to work?
every day. I come in, hit
Phenomenal.
Alexa, play theme from the A-Team, and it starts, and then I get going. And
Dun,
I
dun,
talk
dun, dun,
dun dun
dun,
dun
dun.
dun. Oh
Love
yeah,
that.
it's the best. And so the last chapter of the book, I say, find your A-Team,
Yeah.
find those people that will help raise you up, whether it's your professional life or your personal life. And the thing is, you have to collect a team because not everybody's good at everything. Just like in the A-Team, B.A. Baracus, and why the villains never learned not to lock them in a barn with power tools and old stuff is beyond me. But anyway, but he could build an attack vehicle out of anything. Howling Mad Murdoch could fly any aircraft. The Face could charm anything they needed, and John Hannibal Smith always came up with a plan.
He did.
So everybody was good. They were all good, but they were all great at something. So you need to find the people in your life that are great at one thing, and hopefully you can be that to them as well.
Another viewer question here. What is your favorite part about working on the Today Show?
That's
a tough question.
Every day is different. Every day is different. And you never are sure exactly where you're going to be. You could start the day literally in New York and end in Los Angeles. Or
how does it work? Does you work with a specific producer that says, "All right, Al,
we've got a group of producers, field producers, segment producers, but we've got an executive producer and senior producers who will say, "Hey, there's this drought happening, or a hurricane is brewing, or something like that, or we've got a chance for an interview with so and so. Can you get on a plane?" Yeah. This is the longest I've gone without flying.
Sure.
Since I've joined the Today Show. I mean, it's really been very interesting. And I was so close to executive platinum.
on your points. You said perhaps maybe you could have waited to write this book and it could have been taken on a different tone. But even in the book, you did talk about racism in your first job. I think it was your first job.
It was my third job.
Third job. Sorry.
Cleveland, Ohio. No, it's okay. Cleveland, Ohio.
Where the anchor said, hey, one of your people attacked me or something. So explain that and just how you dealt with it, because so many of us have gone through something similar.
Well, our anchor team, our 6 and 11 o'clock anchor team, was actually a married couple, Doug Adair and Mona Scott. And our station at the time was right in the heart of downtown Cleveland. And in the late 70s, downtown Cleveland wasn't a great place. I mean, it was a good place. But anyway, there was this homeless African-American guy. Everybody saw him around. And one night he came up behind our anchor man, Doug, and bopped him on the back of the head with a newspaper and then ran off. That was it. But the next day, Doug makes it like he was just attacked. It was horrible. Anyway, we're now live on the 6th. And Mona says, well, now here's Al with and before she can finish, he says, Mona, before you introduce Al, I have to say something. Al, I don't know if we're live on TV. Says, Al, I don't know if you know this, but last night, one of your people attacked me. And, that's one of those moments where time stands still. Do I react in outrage? Do I walk off? Do I yell at him? And I looked at him and I said, Doug, why in the world would a weatherman attack you? And then just went on with the forecast. But I'll tell you, that whole time, I mean, I can feel the blood pounding in my ears. I mean, my heart's in my throat because I don't know what's going to happen now. And we get off the air and I'm like, I didn't even say anything because I just didn't know what to say. And I was afraid. And look, I'm the new guy. This guy's a veteran of not just the station, but I've been in Cleveland at least 20 years at that point. And the switchboard lit up. People were outraged. And he was suspended and then demoted, became a, quote, field anchor, and then, left the station with his wife. But, it's those little microaggressions. And I'm sure, look, and I liked Doug, and he's since passed, and I'm sure if you said to him, that's a racist thing to say. And I think he was really nonplussed. He didn't quite understand what he said. Um, but I think it illustrates also that there are times and places for outrage. I think George Floyd, because we're in the midst of this pandemic, this wasn't just another black man being murdered. Um, this was something that we saw that was so beyond the pale in broad daylight, um, with such a disregard for human life that I think people just couldn't believe it. And we didn't have jobs to go back to be distracted by. We weren't going out on vacation. We had to watch this, and I, I think I think we're at a moment now that's becoming a movement. That people, you look at, public opinion polls and such, and people have changed. People are changing. I mean, I don't know about you, Raj, but the number of, after this happened, the number of white colleagues and co-workers and friends who called, "Are you okay? Is everything all right?"
Yeah.
And
You,
help
you got
me.
to call your black friend, right?
Yeah,
These
help
last few
help
weeks.
me. And look, you know, uh, I appreciated it. After a while, it was like, "Hey, I'm a little black friended out right now. Can you let's talk tomorrow?" But this is we're at a real inflection point, I think.
Something interesting. I had a conversation, or actually just had heard from one of the athletes here on the West Coast, real well-known guy, plays for the San Francisco 49ers. His name is Richard Sherman, Stanford alum, smart as heck, black guy, big star football player. A couple months ago when this was all just exploding, he says, you know what's interesting? Wearing a mask now because of the COVID concerns, it takes me back to a difficult place. It takes me back to before I was quote unquote Richard Sherman, before I was a football star. It takes me back to
Mm.
my childhood and my teenage years in Compton when I walk in a room and all people see is a black guy. If I take off my mask, they see it's Richard Sherman, the NFL star. So they're disarmed. But now when I walk around the Bay Area or LA, wherever he's, walking around, he has the mask on. And again, it takes him back 20 years to when he was just a threatening black man.
Yeah.
Pretty interesting wearing a mask. It covers up even for you. All of a sudden, you're not Al Roker anymore.
No, no. Although the funny thing is, people are coming up to me or walking by me, and go, "Hey, Al," and I'm thinking, how the heck do they
Do you have
know?
an NBC logo?
No, I don't. But then I said, and I finally stopped and I said, "How do you know it's me?" He goes, "Well, the head and the glasses."
Yeah, it's true.
Okay, fair point.
But it's interesting, people are going through just so many different thoughts and conversations, regardless of the color of your skin. Just people are
Yeah,
having really
yes, they are.
a lot of growth here, but it's difficult.
Yeah.
You talk about your A team. Tell me something that we don't know about Savannah and Hoda. We see them on TV, wonderful women, great journalists. What don't we know, Al, about them?
About Savannah is that she's she's probably one of the funniest people. One of She has this unbelievable self-deprecating sense of humor that is, and she's this brilliant legal mind, and she's a terrific journalist, but she's got this terrific, almost Mary Richards, from Mary Tyler Moore, almost this Mary Tyler Moore esque persona that's just so spectacular. Hoda is one of the greatest BS detectors that I've ever met. I mean, you can tell when Hoda's like, "Yeah, okay, you're full of it." You can see, and I'm not going to give her tells, but I know when she knows somebody's not being forthright, let's say.
Very interesting. From a viewer again, here we go. Al, you've been married to your lovely wife for 25 years. What advice can you share for a successful and happy marriage? And if you got the answer to that,
Well,
you're going to be a trillionaire.
yeah, I don't know that I've got the answer. I know it takes a lot of work. It is, I mean, it's work, just like raising your children. That's work, and yet you gladly do it. And you get to a point, you need to learn. You need to learn to be humble, and you need to learn to be accepting. Um, that you're not going to change people, um, nor should you. but that you adapt. I think for us, one of the things that's, and especially because we're both in the same business, I think I know that she's helped me find my more serious journalistic side. And I think, and she said I've helped her find her lighter side.
Mhm.
So that I think we complement each other. You know, we don't have to be the same. We don't have to love the same music or the same movies. And in fact, we don't. I can tell you that.
That's
The only thing
okay.
I think the only thing we've agreed on TV wise is The Crown. But other than that, you know, and I recommend everybody, uh, uh, watch wherever it's available. Good Trouble, a film.
Ah,
Happens to be a friend of ours, Dawn Porter, who directed this film about John Lewis,
yeah.
and
And
finished it just
especially
before he
talking
passed.
about on today. I mean,
Yes,
today being such a significant day for him.
yes, yeah. It was so moving watching that ceremony today. It
It
was
was,
just
and that's what John Lewis would say. You know what? There is a good trouble, right?
yeah,
To
yeah.
get into.
And you know, I got to do one of the last interviews, if not the last interview with him, and it was really awe-inspiring, you know, because here's this man who, when we were 23, 24 years old, I don't know what you were doing, but I was working in TV. I wasn't making that much of a difference. This man was literally spilling his blood for this country,
Yeah.
being beaten by troopers coming across that bridge. He was speaking in front of hundreds of thousands in front of the Lincoln Memorial. He was making a difference, you know, and I mean, he's seen it now from both ends. And I asked him, what did he think of this new movement, and did it give him hope? And he said, absolutely. He said, seeing all those different colored faces, you know, and young white people and Asian people and brown people all marching together. And he said, for love, because they love one another. And he said, you know, that has been his mantra, you know, don't hate, love to his dying breath. I mean, it's so, so amazing.
You think he left this earth with some peace in his heart?
I think he did. I think he saw the, uh, the makings of a new movement, you know, up until then, you know, with certain bits of legislation being introduced or trying to be rolled back. I think anybody, if you're human, would have to look at that and say, what's going on here? But then to see this before he passed, I think, you know, gave him some heart balm.
Talk about John Lewis. Who else comes to your mind in terms of the most fascinating men or women that you've met or interviewed? Just a couple, in no specific order.
You know, Charles Schultz. I'm a huge Peanuts fan.
From the
Uh,
Bay Area.
yeah, exactly. I've his studio is up in Santa Rosa,
Yeah.
you know, and got to interview him for the 50th anniversary of Peanuts. And then 6 months later, he was diagnosed with colon cancer, stage 4 colon cancer, and asked me to come back out and give him one last interview. And it meant the world to me. Um, you know, getting to interview James Earl Jones, you know, it's such a varied and stunning career. You know, yeah, I've Rita Moreno, you know, again in the Bay Area,
Yeah.
um, uh, just such a dynamo. And the thing I've learned through all these people, and I talk about them in the book, um, the secret is staying relevant by staying active. You know, I mean, Rita Moreno just one day at a time. The reboot. James Earl Jones still doing voice work. William Shatner, you know, still doing stuff every. You know, he's busier probably now than he was during the Star Trek days. You know, and but all of them say yes to opportunities, which is what I say. You know, never say no, always say yes. Uh,
When we chat and it's someday you're going to be 95 years old, what do you want to be doing?
I don't know. You know, again, it goes to the plan. I don't have one. You know, if you had told me by 2020 I'd have 13 books, I'd be producing some movies for the Hallmark Channel, I'd be, you know, doing the Today Show, I'd laugh. I said, well, you've got a great imagination. Good for you. And I'll take a pound of what you're smoking. But I I don't know. I don't know. Hopefully I'll be alive. That'll be 5 years away from a Smucker's jar. So,
Speaking of that, you got me going to something. What is it? A goober smoocher is
yeah,
essentially. Can we
that's
say
a
that? Essentially, you're
people
not.
goober smoochers. Yeah, who like to go to the fancy parties and stuff like that. I don't, hang out with famous people.
Well,
I
see,
don't like.
that actually, Al, that actually surprised me because not that you're a schmoozer, but I just figured, oh, you would enjoy being a hey handshake and a
No,
hug and all this stuff. But
in
but
fact,
but you're right
I'm
that you're not that guy.
I'm very shy. I mean, look, and it's not an act I'm putting on when I'm out there. I genuinely enjoy those folks and going out and talking with people. But when I'm home and I'm off camera, look, I crack some jokes. In fact, Deborah's family has said to her when they first started to get to know me, does he not like us? Because he seems a lot different.
Is he
And I
bored?
said, no, I'm not different. I'm just not working. I
Yeah.
mean, it would seem pretty odd if I was like, hey, how you doing? You think, what a jerk. So, that's far prefer having dinner with, two or four friends, couple, two or three couples, than go to those fancy parties. Anybody of any import that I know, and not to drop names, but I've gotten to hang out with Spike Lee and Sam Jackson and this one. And now the only reason I know them is because of my wife. Deborah Roberts knows all of their wives. And so
Right.
we end up going out together. But if it were up to me, in fact, we have a deal. I said, okay, I'll give you 2 events every year that you want me to go to. And after that, I'm out.
Ah,
You know,
that's fascinating.
you
That is
know, I
fascinating.
mean, I mean, like even like the Hamptons. Look, there's some very nice folks that we've gotten to meet, and those parties I don't mind because they happen to be an interesting group of people. They're not the usual vacuous types you'll find out there. But boy, no, I tend to. We live in upstate New York, and I call it the anti-Hamptons.
Yeah, right. So no goober smoocher. You are
No,
certainly not a goober smoocher.
no.
Hey, was it a I don't want to say dark time, but was it a challenging time for you leaving Cleveland? It wasn't a full-time offer to come back to New York. However, it was an offer, and also personally, you just gotten divorced. Tell me
Yeah.
about that time.
Well, it was interesting. It was um, our station in Cleveland had been a bad third, and 5 years after I'd gotten there, and again, this had nothing to do with me. It's a coincidence. We had moved into second place, and were threatening to move into first. At the same time, my news director, a woman named Chris Ostrowski, called me into her office and said, "Look, they've got a weekend weather opening at WNBC. You're from New York. You should be there. You have your agent call Bob Davis, the news director. Tell him that I know you're calling, and go down and interview for that job." And so we did all that, did the interview. My agent called me. I was getting on the plane back to Cleveland. He said, "They want you." And it was a full-time gig, but it was just weekend weather, then 3-day reporting.
Sure. Okay, got it.
And that's okay. Um, I get back and I announce it and I tell my news director, and she's happy for me. The general manager calls my agent and says, "Listen, we really need him to stay here. So here's what we'll do." Because at the time, WKYC was also owned by NBC. So it was an
Okay.
owned and operated station, much like you guys are.
Yeah.
And he said, "We're going to make, if he agrees to stay, he will be the second highest paid anchor in Cleveland. And we guarantee at the end of 2 years, we will move him to New York at the salary that we're paying him, which is twice of what he would have been making in New York City." I thought, well, I
Oh,
don't really, I mean, I know my family, but I don't really know anybody in New York. And
yeah.
well, what the heck? So I went in and told my news director, Chris, I said, "You know what, Chris, it's a pretty good day. I'm going to stay. I'm going to stay." She
Stay
said,
in.
"No, I'm going to stay in Cleveland." She says, "No, you're not." He says, "This is your time. As your news director, I think it's terrific you're going to stay here. As your friend, I'm telling you, it's the worst mistake you could possibly make. Get out now." And within two things happened. Within 6 months, almost everybody I knew left the station at WKYC. And within 6 months of me getting to WNBC in New York, the Monday through Friday weatherman, who was a legend in New York, Dr. Frank Field,
Yeah.
left to go to WCBS. And so I worked for 8 weeks in a row with 2 days off. but then I was given the Monday through Friday job. So everything happened for a reason. And because Chris Ostrowski slapped some sense into me, I left.
That's a remarkable conversation for you guys to have at
Yeah.
that point.
Yeah. Never forgotten it.
You get do you get spiritual in the sense that good things happen to good people if you continue to do right to people, that maybe there's a payoff there? Because it seems like you've gotten some nice payoffs. Not that you haven't
Yeah.
worked your butt off, but it
No,
seems like
no,
you've
there's
got some nice people.
I have, but I don't necessarily subscribe to that because there are a lot of very nice people who, haven't gotten the breaks and, struggle. And so, I'm really more the victim of, or the beneficiary of a lot of right place, right time, you know? It's just like I said just now, if I hadn't left to go to to New York, that job would have opened up and I would have been kicking myself. I think that's really more the moral of the story. I mean, you try to treat people right. You don't always succeed. I've made my mistakes. People that friends and family that you let down, but you try to do better, and that's all you can do. That's all God asks of us.
What's the most challenging part of your career? Do you know? Was there one specific week or day or year that you felt, oh
You
my
know,
gosh, I'm not going to make it, or this is really difficult?
it was. I mean, it wasn't technically my career, but it was. My dad developed lung cancer. I mean, I'm literally looking out where my mom and dad were hanging out. This was July of 2001. And by August of 2001, he had been diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. He had stopped smoking 35 years earlier, but what are you going to do? And his first day of chemo was on September 11th, 2001. He was supposed to come into the city. I tried to get him. Why don't you and mom come spend the night with us, and then I can take you after the show? No, no, I want to spend the night here in my bed. And obviously, he never got to that day. Did it once or twice, and it just wasn't working. And so he was dying, and it was a weird time in that here the whole country is mourning what happened in Shanksville and at the Pentagon and down at the World Trade Center, mourning thousands of people dead. But I'm mourning the impending death of my dad. And after he died a few weeks later. I felt like he got cheated, and it was tough for me to go in, even I took a week off and it was still difficult, and it's still difficult. There are days just out of the blue, and both my folks are gone now, where, a story or something we'll have on the show, and I have to get up and excuse myself because it just reminds me it's too difficult, and Lord knows I've been to therapy and all that, but I still miss them to this day. I always remember it was an article about Bryant Gumbel, and he was very close with his dad. I think it was Sports Illustrated, and I'll never forget the title of the article. It was called "The Morning Anchor," Mourning. And then I got to meet Bryant. This was before I met him, and it was, and I didn't quite get it until I lost my dad, and then I understood everything he wrote about.
You wrote about crying in the book.
I
Not
did.
just about your dad, but just about letting a rip and crying and taking a moment. And even some of your colleagues at Today's Show saying, oh, Al's taking a moment. Why is that important? Why'd you write about it?
Well, because I think people need to know that emotion in the proper place and at the proper time, there's nothing wrong with it. You need it. You need to, we've come from our parents' generation. You just suck it up and move on. It's funny. Back in the day, I mean, my mother had 2 miscarriages, and nobody, we didn't acknowledge that then. We've gone through a couple, and you have to deal with it. So and my father was a very demonstrative, emotional man, and that's where I get it from. He was one of those guys. You'd go to somebody go to shake his hand, he'd pull him in for a hug. He kissed us. Boy, his sons and daughters. I didn't realize how unusual he was until I like go to some family reunions. I go to kiss one of my uncles. Oh, hey, hey. So I find that it's cathartic and it's nothing to be ashamed of.
Does it disheartening for you? Personally, it is disheartening for me just knowing in this COVID and even post-COVID era that hugs, handshakes, embraces might be not a thing of the past, but certainly something that we limit moving
Well,
forward.
look, I think you're going to pick your choices. I think family, close friends, people um, that you feel safe around. I think I don't know. I
Yeah,
mean,
we don't know.
it's a weird. I mean, the title of the book is you look so much better in person, and that came from every day at 7:50. I'd have about 20 minutes from about 10 of 8 till about 10 after 8, where I could be outside, shake hands, schmooze with people. And literally once a day, somebody would say, "Oh
You
my
look,
gosh, you look so much better in person."
you're
And
insulted, kind of,
I
sort of.
know they don't mean it as an insult, but when you break it down, I work on TV. So you're telling me, oh, on TV, we have to shield the children. But here in person,
You look
it's not
great.
so scary.
Well, look, I'm sure 99.9 of the 9% of the people you encounter mean well because you bring such
Of
good
course they
energy to
do. Of
people.
course they do. But and you don't want to, come off as being a jerk by saying, "Hey, what do you mean by that?" So you just go, "Thank you. Thank you." Son of
Hey, we got a couple more minutes remaining before we wrap it up. Just some quick questions. A rare day off for you, or on a day off, what do you do? What's a day in the life away from the
it,
camera, away from Zoom meetings, away from the book, away from
it
Raj Mathai? What do
depends.
you do?
Every day's different. Our son right now is away. My two older girls are out of the house. I mean, Leela's a junior and well now a senior, rising senior in Paris, and my oldest girl works as a recipe person for an appliance company. She lives in Jersey. So like right now, our son's away, and you know what? It's just the little things of just like Deborah's right now sitting out on the back deck. I'm in here. If I wasn't doing this, I'd just be hanging out, probably picking some stuff out of the garden for dinner tonight.
Yeah.
It's a pretty we're pretty mellow. We don't do. We've got a lake at the bottom of our hill. I've got a little 18-foot inflatable runabout or I'll
Nice.
go kayaking. Yesterday, I took a 25-mile bike ride. It was great along this rail trail, and it was beautiful. It's mostly shaded, so it wasn't too hot. I'm a simple guy. I don't, I'm okay.
When you come visit out in San Francisco, we will not goober smooch. We will just come out for a nice cup of coffee or just sit in my backyard and chill. How's that sound?
Yeah, I'd love because I've not been to the new station yet. So when I was last there, it was just after the switch had been made,
Right, that's
and
2002. Yeah.
yeah, and it was a pretty ratty little. I think it used to be an old pencil factory.
It was good. It was an old bakery, and don't put lipstick on a pig. It wasn't pretty ratty. It was very ratty.
Yeah, like holes in the floor
It
and
was
stuff. I thought,
bad.
wow, this is a TV. I remember one of my first radio jobs off of campus while I was in college was at WSGO at Radio Park. Radio Park was basically an abandoned lot that was across the street from pollution abatement that basically burned toxic waste material. It's amazing I don't have like other arms and stuff growing out of different orifices. It's
I'm
crazy.
thinking of the last time I saw you in person was the Roger Federer charity
Oh,
tennis match at the San
yes.
Jose Shark Tank Arena with Savannah was there because she's a huge Federer fan.
Right.
And you
Right.
were
And
there and you were all smiles. And that's what,
yep.
when I started this, I said, I can see how you are on air and I know how you are off air. And it's great to
Well,
see.
thank you. And then the next time I was there I was in San Jose for Paul McCartney. I
Yes.
interviewed
Okay.
Sir Paul McCartney, which again, I'm talking to an original Beatle, and one of those guys, and it is funny. The PR people are always the ones that, oh no, don't do this, don't do that, don't look directly into his eyes or anything like that. And so we're standing off to the side, and he comes over to us, and
Al
You know, and he's
Roca.
talking with the crew, and he's not to me, but to my producer and the camera guy and the audio guy, and just genuinely nice.
Yeah.
And I could see the PR guys kind of like give me this look, and I'm like, he came to us. It's not like, and afterwards
He looked at me. He looked
said,
at me.
He said, you looked at him. You drew him into you. I said, I didn't draw anybody.
Hey, we were both supposed to be in Tokyo right about now. Are we
I
planning on
know.
doing this next summer?
I hope so. It's funny. My middle girl, her dream has been to be a production assistant at the Olympics, and she was going, and she was gonna be going like 3 weeks ahead of me.
Yeah.
And she was just crestfallen. And look, nowhere near as obviously crestfallen as all the athletes and coaches and all the folks who worked so hard to put this together. But it'll be interesting next year because it'll be back-to-back Olympics.
Yeah.
Because we would have summer,
and then 6 months later we're in China
6 months
for the
later,
winter.
we're in China.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's going to be an Asian year in 2021.
It sure will. All right, Al. The book comes out today or tomorrow.
Today.
You look so much better.
Tomorrow. What's today? Today's
tomorrow.
Monday. Yes.
It
comes out tomorrow.
You look so much better in person. And before we go, last question. We are barbecuing all summer long, right? Give me 2 barbecue tips for our viewers. What to barbecue and how to do it.
I would say a 2-inch, and this is going to upset the vegans, but a 2-inch bone-in ribeye steak.
Oh.
There's a great place north of you called Snake River Farms.
Of course.
There's another really newer farm in Northern California, in Fort
Bragg?
No.
Fort Funston?
But it's called Five Marys Farm.
Oh, okay. I know Five Marys.
Yeah. Anyway, get a steak from them or from the nice folks at Snake River. Also, Crowd Cow is a good mail order place. Anyway, 2-inch bone-in ribeye. Just a little olive oil on each side.
Okay.
Salt and pepper. Generously salted and peppered on both sides. Hot fire grill. You put it on. You don't start moving it around. Not for at least 5 minutes. Then you flip it over. Another 5 minutes. If you like your steak rare, you're done. If not, move it to the cool side. If you don't have a hooded grill, just put a foil pan over it and let it cook for another 5 minutes.
Oh.
And you're good. Don't put don't come with steak sauce or a marinade or anything. Stop it. Just eat good meat. But don't move your meat around, and start with good meat.
And are you a wine guy, beer guy, soda guy?
I've developed the, although I now drink it year round, but I like the rosé.
Yeah, rosé all day.
And about 5 years ago, a British guy actually, introduced me to 2 drinks that changed my life. Actually, there are 3, but 2 he introduced. A Pimm's Cup.
Ah, yes.
And a Hendrix and Tonic.
Gin and tonic, classic.
Yeah. And then when I went to take my daughter back to school 2 years ago, I had an Aperol Spritz for the first time in Paris.
My wife drinks that twice a day in the summer.
Love the Aperol Spritz. So,
excellent. Al, thanks for your time. I read the book. I'm looking forward to all our viewers reading the book. It's really fun. It's revealing, and you do get into some serious topics in there with your great personality. Thanks for your time. Have a great rest of the summer, okay?
Thanks, you too, Raj.
Okay, take care. Our thanks to Al Roker. We encourage you to pick up your copy of his new book. We also want to express our appreciation to all of our viewers joining us online. The Commonwealth Club has a wide range of programs coming up, so please visit our website for more information. I'm Raj Mathai, and this virtual Commonwealth Club program is adjourned.